Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Freedom Fishing, which is the Christmas episode. Merry Christmas to everybody. I've been wanting to give my testimony for quite some time on the channel. This is really it's who I am, and I want to kind of share my story, my testimony. I thought Christmas time was a great time to do that, and so I'm just going to kind of give you as quick as recap as I can about my journey in my faith and my life a little bit, so that hopefully it can encourage some of you. And if I had to put one word around my testimony, it'd probably be around the word forgiveness. And so I'm just going to share a little bit about myself, and hopefully this helps somebody out there who might be watching this. So thanks for watching, guys. So it was the summer of 1974, a long time ago. I was 6 years old, my brother was 5, and my mom was 3 months pregnant with my little sister, Sherilyn. And my dad came home from work that day, and a little different than normal. He had a woman in the car with him. I guess it was his girlfriend. And he came in the house, got his stuff, told my mom he was leaving, and he left. My mom was 3 months pregnant with my sister, and she had a nervous breakdown. And it was very, very challenging for us, of course. She didn't have an education. She'd never really worked. And he brought his girlfriend home, got in the car, and left. And for 10 years, we didn't hear from him for 10 years. No financial support, no dad in our life. And we kind of moved around from, that was in Douglasville, Georgia. We moved to Arizona, where my grandfather was, my mom's dad, and he helped us out for a while. And then she met an old high school sweetheart, Ken, and reconnected with him. And we moved to Michigan when I was 9 years old. I'm in my game room, and there's Michigan stuff everywhere. That's where I'm filming this from. That's where I grew my love for Michigan sports and Detroit sports. And then from that moment, from the age of 9, when we moved to Michigan, there was always alcohol and drugs, mostly marijuana around. I can remember sitting on the sofa, and my mom would, take a hit off the marijuana and pass it around to the next person. And I'm 9 years old sitting in there. So I've never done drugs in my life, but I probably was high at 9 from all that secondhand smoke from the marijuana. And one day, my mom getting beat up by her boyfriend a lot, and yelling and screaming and cussing all the time because they would get drunk, and just a lot of chaos. And this lady, Sherry Massey, who lived across the street that she had met, we lived in Oscoda, Michigan. Ken had been transferred there in the Air Force to Wart Smith Air Force Base. And Sherry befriended my mom, invited her to church. And I'll never forget, my mom went to church one Sunday without us, with Sherry. And the following Sunday, we all went to church, except for Ken. Ken didn't go. And literally, I tell people that my mom quit alcohol and marijuana and drugs cold Jesus, because she never did it again. I went to that church, Oscoda Assembly of God Church on US 23 in Little Oscoda. And from that day on, our lives changed. It was happier. It was calmer. We eventually moved out of the house with Ken because, to my mom, that was a sin to live with someone she wasn't married to. Moved into our own little place. It was a very high unemployment rate in that county, and compared to the country, one of the top unemployment rates in the country. We didn't have a car. We were in severe poverty. We lived on food stamps and government aid. But we made it. If it weren't for our church family, I know that almost every Thanksgiving and Christmas, I can literally see right now the car pulling up, day before Thanksgiving, day before Christmas, somebody walking up with a brown paper bag. And inside that bag was a small turkey, a can of green beans, maybe some potatoes. And at Christmas time, maybe some gifts for us kids. Because without them, we would have not had a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner or gifts. So it's very, very strange. We were very happy as kids from the age of 9 to 15 when I lived in Michigan. But we were very, very, very poor. We would go to this vegetable store on River Road, and they would throw the old vegetables out back, the ones that they couldn't sell, that were bruised and soured up, and we would go through their trash. I was 12 years old or so, and we'd go through the trash and take those vegetables home and cut the bad spots off and eat those. That's where I got my love for fishing, and really where the channel started back in the early 80s, because I grew a love for fishing. My mom and I would fish all night long in the El Salvador River and catch catfish all night. We'd catch 50 to 100 blue channel cats. We'd go home and I would clean them at a young age. And we would eat catfish. That was a part of our staple of our meal. We probably ate more catfish than anything because it was basically free. We bought some giant night crawlers and kept catfish all night. We ate for free off of that catfish. And that's why I grew my love for fishing. And in that church, at the age of 12, I'll never forget how I got saved. I won't bore you with the details of what happened, but I remember it was a skit they had done, and someone had died, and they're walking down to be judged, and some of them went to heaven, and some went to hell. And today the churches don't preach a lot about hell. The word hell is actually mentioned more in the Bible than the word heaven, and it's real, and I believe it's real, and I believe that on this earth we have a choice to make. And on Christmas Day, Jesus was born. God sent his son to the Virgin Mary to have a baby, and he was born on Christmas Day, and on Easter he was sacrificed and reborn and brought back to life. And because of his sacrifice, we have the ability to go to heaven. And all we have to do is accept him. That's it. That's all we have to do. But the main story about my life would be that as I got saved at 12, and from the age of 12 to 15, we stayed in Michigan. My dad ended up calling us back and asking us to, after 10 years, I've never heard from him. He called one day and said, hey, I want to see the kids. I want to be a part of their lives. And he was in Florida. He was in Jacksonville. And he said, if you bring the kids down to Jacksonville, I'll start paying child support. And we were in severe poverty. Our lights were turned off constantly. We used snow to flush the toilet. We used snow to have water to boil. I could go on and on with the stories of the poverty, and this was in the mid 80s. This wasn't during the Great Depression. So my mom said, yeah. So we moved down to Florida, and he lived in a 2-story house, swimming pool in the backyard. And he was on, I think at the time, his 4th wife. And we had lived in poverty that whole time. I'll never forget this. When I went into his house for the first time, he had a poster in the living room that said, he who dies with the most toys wins. He who dies with the most toys wins. And that's kind of what my dad thought. He never had a lot of money. But I guess he was maybe middle class, lower middle class, but he was chasing skirts and alcohol and drugs and money, and that's what he was trying to find his happiness. And so we moved down there. He got us a double-wide trailer in Middlebrook, Florida. Went to Middlebrook High School for a few months. He paid rent for us, $300 a month. I'll never forget that amount. And that was his child support. And he kept his word for 3 months. And after 3 months, he stopped paying the child support. So we uprooted our lives from Michigan, moved to Florida, and he paid child support for 3 months. And I had to go to his house one time before he stopped paying. We had no soap and no toilet paper. And my mom, I was 16 at the time and could drive, and we did have a car at that time. And I drove over to his 2-story house with the pool and basically begged for toilet paper and soap. And I'll never forget him standing outside, him chastising me about why mom couldn't afford soap and toilet paper for us. And I'm 16 years old. I grew a hate for that man for obvious reasons. And from 16 to 19, right when I got married, I hated him. And I think I was just in my hate of him. But the problem with that hate was that he didn't care. He didn't even know or care. That hate was killing me. It wasn't doing anything to him. And my wife, Allison, who I met at 16 years old, I had some troubling times through those few years. And not until I realized that Jesus Christ came to this earth to die on the cross for my sins and forgive me for all the sins I've done, all the sins I'm going to do today, and all the sins I'm going to do in my future. If he can forgive me for all of those, then I should forgive my father for his sins towards me and my family. Mostly my mom. And so I forgave my father one day. Right around the age of 19, I forgave him. And it helped me. My dad never asked me to forgive him. My dad didn't really even think what he did was wrong. He never asked for forgiveness. I never verbally said to him, I forgive you, because he wouldn't have known what I was even talking about. But because I forgave him, because of the example Christ did for me, it freed me up. Me forgiving him, even though he didn't care or know, freed me up to love. And from that day forward, from the age of 19, for the rest of my life, I have been so free of that, free of even hating anybody, really. I've been blessed by God to have a calm demeanor, and I don't really hate. The commandments are to love thy God with all your heart, soul, and your mind, and number 2 is to love thy neighbor, and that's what I try to do. And that's the forgiveness of my father at the age of 19 is really my main testimony to anybody out there who's carrying weight like that, where you've got hate for someone, specifically family members that you haven't forgiven. And for me, that was literally the changing moment in my life. And I've had an amazing life. I've got a career I don't deserve, a family I don't deserve, a 35-year marriage I don't deserve, 3 amazing adult children, Tyler, Heidi, and Tanner, 4 amazing grandkids, Ethan, who's 12, and Judah, who's 8, Noah, who's 4, and Jackson, who's now 1. And I just wanted to use this small platform I have. It's a small platform. I got, just a few hundred subscribers, but I don't fish just to fish. It's called freedom fishing because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And my wife and I love the freedom of being on the water, and Freedom Boat Club. That's why it's named Freedom Fishing. But I want everybody to understand, number 1 is where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And if you look behind me here, I've got this poster, be strong, be brave, be fearless, you are never alone. Joshua 1:9, and it's a basketball. I'm a huge sports guy. You are never alone. And if with Christ sending his son on Christmas Day, with God sending his son, Jesus Christ, on Christmas Day as a token to us to live life on this earth as a man and as God, but as a man tempted with everything we were tempted with, and to not sin ever, and to sacrifice on the cross on Easter 33 years later for me, and to forgive me for everything I've ever done. I'd pass it on to my father. My dad died of pancreatic cancer, and when he called me, we had he got back in our lives after I forgave him. I told my wife I want the kids to have their grandfather in our life, and so he was in our life later on until he passed away of pancreatic cancer. And I'll never forget when he called me to tell me he had pancreatic cancer, and he was, it was not looking good. I had this burden to share my faith with him and to share salvation with him. And so we lived in Charleston, and I told my wife I want to go to Atlanta and sit down and witness to my dad and see if I can't get him to accept Christ, so that when he does pass it, he'll be in heaven. And we drove to Atlanta. We went to Cracker Barrel. I told the kids, all right, guys, everybody was in on the plane. It was, you guys stay here. I'm going to ask Dad to go outside and play checkers. And at a checkers barrel outside of Cracker Barrel, I witnessed to my father and told him what I believed, and that he needed to accept Christ to be able to go to heaven when he passed. And my dad looked at me and said, well, when I was about 6, Greg, I did that. I'm good. And not many people would say this, and I'm going to probably have some family members who might watch this who are frustrated with this statement, but I just believe what I believe, and I believe the Bible. And unless my dad made a decision in the next 4 to 6 months that he was alive to accept Christ and go to heaven, I don't believe he's in heaven. God is a just God. He loves us, but he gives us free will. He gives us free will to make decisions. And you can't pick and choose the Bible. You can't say, well, I think this part's real and this part's not. Either you believe it or you don't. And I believe it, and I believe everything it says. Unless my father accepted Christ as Lord and Savior, he could do that at the very last day of his life, and God would forgive him for all of his sins. But if he didn't do that, I believe he's not in heaven. And all I know is that day he didn't accept. And if he did when he was 6, he would have sinned in his lifetime, because we all sin, but he would not have lived the life that he lived. He was not a man of God. And so I wanted to take today at Christmas to share my testimony. I am so thankful for the life that I have, and my wife Allison and my kids, but more importantly, Sherry Massey, who I talked about in the beginning of this. I want you to think about this, the generation she's changed. Sherry Massey inviting my mom to church, my mom saying yes, my mom going to church, changed generations. It was generational change. My entire family is a family of Christians, all my kids, my grandkids, my wife, and I strongly believe that we will all go to heaven because we've all accepted Christ. And if Sherry Massey had not witnessed to my mom and invited her to church, who knows where I would be. I'm a high school dropout. I should not have the career I have. And God has blessed me. I have been blessed to have a career I don't deserve. And it's not because I'm a Christian, but I do believe that, God does show favor at times, and I've had plenty of trials and tribulations as well. And so I wanted to take today to share my testimony mostly about forgiveness, and how when I forgave my father, how it changed me and my heart. It didn't affect him any. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Please share this particular video. This will be the video I want shared more than any other video, because maybe it can reach somebody who needs to hear a message like this of forgiveness, and potentially to get into the Bible and go to church and to accept Christ and expand the kingdom of heaven, because we are called to be fishers of men. I love to fish for fish, but everybody who knows me or might spend some time with me knows my faith. I'm not ashamed of it, and I love to share it because it is our calling to be fishers of men and to expand the kingdom of heaven. So thanks for watching. Merry, Merry, Merry Christmas to everybody. Have a great day, a happy new year, and we'll see you next year. God bless.